The Sheikh billionaire banned her from the restaurant until the child he loved refused to speak to anyone except her. The rain had been falling for hours, steady and cold, turning the streets of Manhattan into rivers of light and shadow. Inside Le Ciel de Rey, the city's most exclusive French restaurant, the world outside didn't matter. Crystal chandeliers cast warm amber light over white tablecloths, polished silverware, and guests who spoke in hushed, refined tones. This was a place where fortunes were made over wine, where power dressed in silk and cashmere, where silence itself cost money. Emma Carter roved between the tables like a ghost. Her black uniform was crisp, her blonde hair pulled back into a tight bun, her movements efficient and nearly invisible. That's how she preferred it. Invisibility was safety. Silence was survival. She had worked at Le Ciel de Rey for 3 years, and in all that time she had perfected the art of being present without being seen. She knew which guests preferred their water still or sparkling before they asked. She knew when to approach and when to vanish. She knew how to smile without showing teeth, how to nod without speaking, how to serve without existing. Tonight, the restaurant was full. The hum of quiet conversations blended with the soft notes of a piano in the corner. Emma balanced a tray of wine glasses, her hands steady despite the tremor she felt beneath her skin. It was always there, the anxiety, the weight, the constant awareness that one mistake could cost her everything. She had learned that lesson the hard way. As she turned toward table 7, her eyes caught something that made her pause. A man had just entered, and the entire room seemed to shift in response. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that looked like it cost more than her yearly rent. His presence was immediate, undeniable, like gravity had changed direction just for him. Sheikh Rashid Al-Zahir. I had heard the name before. Everyone had. He was one of those men whose wealth wasn't just substantial, it was unimaginable. Real estate empires across 3 continents, oil, technology, influence that reached into governments and boardrooms alike. He was known for his precision, his coldness, his refusal to tolerate anything less than perfection. But tonight, something was different. Beside him walked a small boy, no older than 6. The child's hand was lost in Rashid's larger one, his steps hesitant, his dark eyes fixed on the polished floor. He wore a tiny suit that matched his uncle's, perfectly tailored, but it hung on him like a costume. His face was pale, expressionless, carved from marble. Emma's chest tightened. She knew that look. She had worn it herself years ago, when the world stopped making sense. The maitre d' led them to table 12, the best table in the house, positioned near the window with a view of the rain-soaked streets below. Rashid sat with the controlled grace of a man who owned every room he entered. The child climbed into the chair across from him, silent, unmoving. Emma watched from across the room as Rashid leaned forward slightly, speaking to the child in a low voice. The child didn't respond, didn't nod, didn't even blink. Rashid's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Emma? She flinched at the sound of her name. Her manager Laurent stood beside her, with a polished smile that didn't reach his eyes. Table 12, he said quietly. Do not make mistakes tonight. Emma nodded, her throat dry. She approached the table slowly, her footsteps silent on the thick carpet. As she neared, she caught fragments of Rashid's voice, low, firm, but edged with something she couldn't name. Amir, you need to eat something. Anything. Please. The child didn't move. His small hands rested in his lap, perfectly still. Emma stopped beside the table, her posture straight, her expression neutral. She had learned long ago not to look guests directly in the eye unless they addressed her first. Good evening, she said softly. May I start you with something to drink? Rashid's gaze lifted, and for a brief, unsettling moment, Emma felt the full weight of it. His eyes were dark, sharp, and utterly cold. They assessed her the way one might assess a tool, functional or faulty, useful or disposable. Water. Still. No ice. Of course. She turned her attention to the boy. And for you, Amir didn't look up, his small hands clenched slightly in his lap. "He'll have the same," Rashid said, his tone clipped. Emma hesitated. Something about the child tugged at her in a way she couldn't explain. She crouched slightly, bringing herself closer to his eye level, her voice gentler than before. "Is there anything special you'd like? We have apple juice or maybe some lemonade." Amir's eyes flickered, just for a second, but he said nothing. Rashid's expression darkened. He doesn't speak. The words were cold, final, meant to end the conversation. Emma straightened, her heart sinking. "Of course. I'll be right back." She returned to the service station, her hands moving automatically as she prepared the water. But her mind was elsewhere. She had seen trauma before. She had lived it, and the boy at table 12 carried it in every line of his small body. When she returned with the drinks, she placed them carefully on the table, ensuring the glasses made no sound against the surface. Rashid had his phone in hand, his attention divided. Amir sat motionless, staring at the rain streaking down the window. Emma turned to leave, but as she did, her elbow brushed the edge of the tray she had set on the stand beside the table. It tilted. Time slowed. The water glass tipped, spilling across the white tablecloth in a cold, spreading stain. Drops splattered on Rashid's sleeve. Emma's breath caught. What is wrong with you?" Rashid's voice cut through the quiet restaurant like a blade. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. The piano continued, oblivious. Emma froze, her hands trembling, as she reached for a napkin. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me—" "Don't." He stood abruptly, his full height towering over her. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "It was an accident," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "An accident." His eyes were ice. "This suit costs more than you'll make in 6 months. And you," he gestured toward her with barely concealed contempt, "you can't even manage to set a glass down without creating a disaster." Emma's face burned. She could feel the eyes of every guest in the restaurant on her, could hear the whispers beginning to ripple through the room. "Sir, please, I'll cover the cleaning cost." "You will do no such thing." Rashid turned to Laurent, who had rushed over, his face pale with panic. "Mr. Al-Zahir, I assure you, I don't want assurances. I want competence. Clearly, she doesn't belong here." Emma's vision blurred. She opened her mouth to speak, to apologize again. But the words died in her throat. And then, a sound broke the silence. Small, fragile, devastating. "Don't go." Every head turned. Amir was staring directly at Emma, his dark eyes wide, glistening with something that might have been tears. His small hands gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "Don't go," he whispered again louder. Rashid froze. His expression shifted from anger to shock in the space of a heartbeat. "Amir," his voice cracked. You spoke." The boy didn't look at his uncle, he only looked at Emma, as if she were the only solid thing in a world made of water and glass. Emma's heart twisted. She didn't move, didn't breathe, afraid that any motion might shatter whatever fragile thing had just been born in this moment. Rashid stared at his nephew, then at Emma, then back again. The color had drained from his face. For the first time since he had entered the restaurant, he looked uncertain, vulnerable. "Amir," he said quietly, kneeling beside the boy's chair. But Amir's eyes remained fixed on Emma. His lips trembled, and he whispered, "One more word. Stay."
Emma didn't know what to do. She looked at Laurent, who looked at Rashid, who looked at his nephew as if seeing him for the first time. The silence stretched, fragile and unbearable. And then Rashid straightened, his expression hardening once more, the vulnerability vanishing behind walls of steel. "Clean this up," he said to Laurent, his voice cold again, "and keep her away from this table." He sat back down, pulling Amir's chair closer, murmuring something Emma couldn't hear. Laurent placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Go, now." Emma turned and walked away, her legs unsteady, her vision still blurred. Behind her, she heard Amir's voice again, soft and broken. Where did she go? She pushed through the door into the kitchen, the noise and heat hitting her like a wall. No one looked at her, no one asked if she was okay. She leaned against the cold steel counter, her hands shaking, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. And for the first time in 3 years, she let herself cry. But she made no sound, because she had learned long ago that no one was listening. The rest of the shift passed in a haze. Emma stayed in the back, washing dishes, folding napkins, doing anything Laurent assigned to keep her away from the dining room. Her hands moved mechanically, but her mind replayed the moment over and over. The boy's voice. Don't go. Stay. She had never seen him before, had never spoken to him beyond that brief attempt at kindness. Yet something in her had reached him, or something in him had recognized something in her. She didn't know which was more terrifying. At midnight, the last guests left. The kitchen staff filed out, exhausted and silent. Emma changed out of her uniform in the small locker room, her movement slow, deliberate. Her hands still trembled. When she finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened under the streetlights, reflecting 1,000 fragmented versions of the city. She pulled her coat tighter and began the long walk to the subway. But as she turned the corner, she heard footsteps behind her. Heavy, purposeful. She glanced back. A black car idled at the curb, sleek and silent. The back door opened. Rashid Al-Zahir stepped out. Emma's breath caught. Miss Carter. Sir? She stopped, her heart pounding. He approached slowly, his expression unreadable in the dim light. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before, stripped of the earlier venom. My nephew hasn't spoken in over a year. Emma didn't respond. She didn't trust her voice. Tonight, he spoke to you, twice. Rashid stopped a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his posture tense. I need to know why. I don't know, Emma said honestly. You must have done something, said something. She shook her head. I just asked if you wanted juice, that's all. Rashid studied her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers as if trying to find a hidden answer. He asked where you went, he said finally, and when I told him you had work to do, he stopped eating, stopped moving. He only repeated your name. My name? How does he... Your name tag. She glanced down at her coat. She had forgotten to remove it. Emma, I don't understand, she whispered. Neither do I, Rashid's jaw tightened. But I need you to come back tomorrow at 6. He'll be there. Sir, I don't think... I'm not asking. The words hung between them, cold and absolute. Rashid met his gaze, and for the first time he saw past the anger and control. He saw desperation, raw and bleeding. I'll be there, Emma said quietly. Rashid nodded once, then turned back toward the car. But before he got in, he paused. Miss Carter. Yes? He didn't look at her. The suit. Forget it. Then he was gone, the car disappearing into the night. Emma stood alone on the empty street, the city breathing around her, and wondered what she had just agreed to. But deep in her chest, beneath the fear and confusion, something else stirred, a small, stubborn spark. Because for the first time in 5 years, someone had needed her, and she hadn't been too late. Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the radiator and the distant wail of sirens. Her mind refused to rest, cycling through questions that had no answers. At 5 in the morning, she gave up on sleep. She showered, dressed in clean clothes, and sat at her tiny kitchen table with a cup of black coffee she didn't drink. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window, pale, hollow-eyed, fragile. She looked away. Her eyes fell on the small wooden box on the shelf beside the window. She hadn't opened it in months, maybe longer. She stood, her movement slow, and lifted the box down. The wood was smooth, worn by years of handling. Inside was a single photograph. Two girls, blonde and laughing, arms wrapped around each other. One was Emma, 15 years old, her smile wide and unguarded. The other was Lily, 12, her eyes bright with mischief. Emma's chest tightened. 5 years. It had been 5 years since the accident, 5 years since the phone call, 5 years since the world had split open and swallowed the only person who had ever really known her. Lily had been waiting for Emma to pick her up from dance class. But Emma had been late, stuck at work, too afraid to leave early, too afraid to disappoint her boss. She had texted Lily to take the bus. "I'll be home soon, promise." Lily never made it home. The bus had collided with a truck at the intersection of 5th and Lexington. 3 people died. Lily was one. Emma had spent the last 5 years replaying that moment, the text, the decision, the promise she didn't keep. If she had left on time, Lily would still be alive. That was the truth Emma carried, the weight that pressed on her chest every morning, every night, every breath. She closed the box carefully, her hands trembling, and placed it back on the shelf. Some wounds never healed. They just learned to exist. At 5:45, Emma arrived at Les Ciels de Rey. The restaurant was closed, the lights dim. She knocked on the side door and Laurent opened it, his expression tight. "You're early." "I didn't want to be late." He stepped aside, letting her in. "Mr. Al-Zahir is already here. Table 12. Don't make me regret this." Emma nodded and walked through the empty dining room. The silence was eerie, the space too large without the hum of voices and clinking glasses. At table 12, Rashid sat with Amir beside him. The boy's head was down, his small hands resting on the table. He looked even smaller in the daylight filtering through the tall windows. Rashid stood as Emma approached. He didn't offer a greeting. "He hasn't eaten today," he said bluntly. "The therapist says it's a form of control. He'll eat when he's ready." His eyes flicked to Emma. "But when I mentioned you'd be here," he nodded. Emma's throat tightened. "Nodded? It's the most response I've gotten in weeks." She glanced at Amir. The boy's eyes remained down, but his fingers twitched slightly. "May I sit?" Emma asked. Rashid hesitated, then gestured to the chair across from Amir. Emma sat slowly, folding her hands in her lap. She didn't speak, didn't force anything. She simply waited. After a long moment, Amir's eyes lifted. They were dark, deep, and filled with a sadness that shouldn't belong to a child. "Hi, Amir," Emma said softly. "I'm Emma." He stared at her, unblinking. "I heard you like this restaurant. It's pretty fancy, huh? I always feel a little out of place here. Do you?" Amir's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Emma smiled gently. "That's okay. You don't have to talk if you don't want to." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small folded napkin. She opened it on the table, revealing a simple drawing she had sketched that morning. A stick-figure girl and a stick-figure boy standing under a sun.
"I'm not very good at drawing," she said, "but I used to draw with my little sister. She was way better than me." Amir's eyes moved to the drawing. His fingers inched forward, touching the edge of the napkin. "Do you like to draw?" Emma asked. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Amir nodded. Emma's heart leapt. She glanced at Rashid, who stood frozen a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "Maybe you could show me sometime," Emma said. "I bet you're really good." Amir's hand moved across the table, resting on the napkin. Then, in a voice barely louder than breath, he whispered, "She used to draw." Emma's smile faltered. "Who did?" "Mama." The word fell like a stone into still water. Rashid closed his eyes, his jaw clenched so tightly Emma thought it might break. Amir's small face crumpled, tears spilling over, silent and devastating. "She used to draw suns," he whispered, "and sing." Emma's vision blurred. She reached across the table without thinking, her hand covering his tiny one. "I bet they were beautiful," she said, her voice thick. Amir looked at her, his tears reflecting the soft light. And then something impossible happened. He held on. His small fingers curled around hers, gripping tightly, as if she were the only thing keeping him from drowning. Emma held on too. And in that moment, something shifted in the room, something fragile and sacred and unbearably painful. Rashid turned away, his shoulders rigid, his hand pressed to his mouth. But Emma saw. She saw the grief, the helplessness, the unbearable weight of a man who had lost someone he couldn't save and was now watching a child drown in the same sorrow. For the first time since she had met Sheikh Rashid Al-Zahir, Emma didn't see power. She saw a man breaking in silence. And she understood him completely. The following days blurred together in a strange, fragile routine. Every evening at 6, Emma returned to Le Ciel Doré. Every evening, Amir was there, waiting. Rashid stopped trying to force conversation. He simply watched as Emma sat with Amir, drawing together, speaking softly about nothing and everything. She told him stories about the city, about the pigeons that fought over bagels in the park, about the way rain smelled different in summer. She never mentioned Lily, but she thought about her every time Amir smiled. And Amir was smiling now. Small, hesitant things that appeared and vanished like sunlight through clouds. He began eating again. Not much, but enough. He started drawing more, filling napkins with stick figures and crooked houses and suns with too many rays. One evening, he drew a woman with long hair. "Who's that?" Emma asked gently. "You," Amir whispered. "You?" He nodded, then pointed to a smaller figure beside her. "And me." She looked at the drawing, at the two figures holding hands under a smiling sun, and something inside her cracked open. "It's perfect," she whispered. Amir smiled, a real one this time. And across the room, Rashid watched with an expression Emma couldn't read. But peace, Emma had learned, never lasted long. On the 8th evening, as she was preparing to leave, Rashid approached her near the service station. "Miss Carter." She turned. "Yes?" His expression was guarded, tense. "I need to speak with you, privately." Emma's pulse quickened. She followed him to a small office off the main dining room. He closed the door, and suddenly the space felt too small. "Amir's therapist wants to meet you," Rashid said without preamble. Emma blinked. "Me? Why?" "Because he talks about you constantly." Rashid's voice was tight, controlled. "He draws you, asks for you, refuses to engage unless you knows you'll be there." I don't understand what you want me to say." "I want to understand why." He stepped closer, his eyes sharp. "I've had the best child psychologist in the country working with him for a year. Nothing. And then you, a waitress? Spill water on my table and suddenly he speaks?" Emma flinched at the word waitress, the way he said it, like something lesser, something disposable. "I didn't do anything special," she said quietly. "Then what is it?" His frustration bled through the control. "What does he see in you?" The question hung between them, raw and desperate. Emma met his gaze, and for the first time, she let herself be honest. "Maybe he sees someone who understands what it's like to lose everything." Rashid froze. "Maybe he sees someone who's still trying to figure out how to breathe after the world stops making sense." Her voice was quiet but steady. "I don't have answers, Mr. Al-Zahir. I don't know why he talks to me. But if it helps him, then I'll keep coming. Not because you asked, because he needs it." She turned toward the door. "Wait." She stopped. Rashid's voice softened, just barely. "What did you lose?" Emma's hand tightened on the door handle. "My sister," she said, without turning around. 5 years ago. She was 12. She opened the door and walked out, leaving Rashid alone in the too small office. And for the first time in years, he felt something crack inside him. Something he had buried so deeply he thought it was gone. Grief. The rain returned that night, heavier than before. Emma sat in her apartment, the sound of it against the window filling the silence. She stared at the wooden box on the shelf, at the photograph inside she didn't need to see to remember. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Miss Carter. Rashid's voice was different, quieter, stripped of its usual command. Mr. Al-Zahir, I need to tell you something. Amir's mother, my sister, died in a car accident a year ago. She was everything to him. Emma's chest tightened. He was in the car with her, Rashid continued, his voice thick. He saw everything. The doctors say he stopped speaking because the trauma was too much, but I think he stopped because he doesn't know how to say goodbye. Emma closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I don't either, she whispered. There was a long silence. We're the same, aren't we? Rashid said finally. You and I. Yes, Emma said. We are. Then maybe, he said quietly, we can help each other figure out how to keep breathing. Emma didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because in that moment across the city, two broken people recognized each other, and that recognition was the first step towards something neither of them expected. Healing. The weeks that followed were a slow, painful thaw. Emma continued to meet with Amir, but now Rashid joined them more often. He no longer stood at a distance. He sat with them, listened to their conversations, even attempted to draw. Badly, which made Amir laugh, for the first time. The sound was pure magic. Emma found herself looking forward to those evenings in a way that frightened her. She had built her life on routine and distance, on never letting anyone close enough to matter. But Amir had slipped past her defenses without trying, and Rashid, cold, arrogant Rashid, was beginning to do the same. She noticed the small things, the way he softened when Amir smiled, the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way his voice changed when he said her name, less like a command, more like a question. One evening, after Amir had fallen asleep on the booth, his small head resting on Rashid's arm, Emma stood to leave. Stay, Rashid said quietly. Emma turned. He's asleep. He won't know. I'm not asking for him. Rashid's eyes met hers, and there was something in them she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Emma's breath caught. I don't understand you, she said softly. Good. A faint, bitter smile touched his lips. I don't understand myself lately. What do you mean? He looked down at Amir, his hand resting protectively on the boy's back. I've spent the last year trying to control everything, his therapy, his schedule, his grief, trying to fix him like he's a broken machine. He paused. But you didn't try to fix him. You just sat with him. And that's what he needed.
Emma's throat tightened. He's not broken. No. Rashid looked at her again. Neither are you. The words landed like a blow. You don't know me, Emma whispered. I know you blame yourself for your sister's death. His voice was gentle, devastating. I know because I do the same. Every day. I replay the last conversation I had with Lila, my sister. We argued. She left angry. And 2 hours later, she was gone. Emma's vision blurred. I've spent a year believing I killed her, Rashid continued, that if I hadn't been so stubborn, so cold, she'd still be alive. His voice cracked. Amir lost his mother, but I lost my sister, and I didn't know how to grieve because I was too busy hating myself. Emma sat down slowly, her legs unsteady. It wasn't your fault, she said. Then why does it feel like it was? She had no answer, because she asked herself the same question every night. They sat in silence, the restaurant empty and quiet around them, two people carrying the same unbearable weight. and for the first time, it felt a little lighter. But the world, Emma knew, didn't allow peace for long. 3 nights later, as Emma arrived at the restaurant, Laurent pulled her aside. "You need to be careful," he said in a low voice. Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" "There's a woman asking questions about you. Expensive suit, expensive attitude." He glanced toward the dining room. "She's been here twice." Emma's stomach dropped. "Who is she?" "Didn't give a name, but I've seen her with Mr. Al-Zahir before." Laurent's eyes were serious. "Whatever's happening between you and him, be smart. People like that don't play fair." Emma's pulse quickened. She walked into the dining room, her mind racing. At table 12, Rashid and Amir were already seated. But tonight, they weren't alone. A woman sat across from them. She was stunning. Tall, elegant, dressed in a white designer dress that probably cost more than Emma's entire wardrobe. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves, her smile sharp and practiced. Emma stopped a few feet away, suddenly feeling small. The woman's eyes flicked to her, assessing, dismissing. "Ah," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "you must be the help." Rashid's jaw tightened. Diana. So this was Diana Ashford. Emma had heard the name whispered among the staff. Rashid's ex-fiancée, a woman who had nearly become his wife before the engagement ended abruptly 2 years ago. "I was just catching up with Rashid," Diana said, her smile widening. "It's been too long." Emma glanced at Rashid, but his expression was unreadable. "Amir, darling," Diana cooed, leaning forward, "don't you remember me? I used to visit all the time." Amir shrank back, his eyes dropping to the table. Diana's smile faltered, irritation flickering across her face. "He's shy," Rashid said curtly. "Emma, could you bring water?" "Of course." As Ella turned to leave, she heard Diana's voice, low and sharp. "Really, Rashid, the help. That's a new low, even for you." Emma's face burned, but she kept walking. Behind her, Rashid's voice was ice. "Leave." "I'm trying to help." "I said leave." Emma didn't hear the rest. She reached the service station, her hands trembling as she poured water. She hated the humiliation curling in her stomach, hated the way Diana's words had landed like poison. The help. That's all she was. That's all she'd ever be. When she returned, Diana was gone. Rashid sat rigid, his jaw tight. Amir looked close to tears. Emma set the water down carefully. "Is everything okay?" "No," Rashid said flatly. Amir reached for Emma's hand, his grip desperate. "Hey," she said gently, crouching beside him. "It's okay. I'm here." "She's mean," she whispered. "Some people are, but they can't hurt you unless you let them." "Promise?" Emma's heart broke. "Promise." Rashid watched them, his expression shadowed with something Emma couldn't name. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. She wasn't just helping Amir anymore. She was falling. Falling for a man who lived in a world she could never belong to. Falling for a boy who needed her in ways that scared her. Falling into something that could only end in pain. But when Amir squeezed her hand and smiled, she knew it was already too late. She had been falling from the start. The days turned into weeks, and the fragile routine continued. But Diana's appearance had shifted something. Emma felt eyes on her now, staff whispering, guests staring, the weight of scrutiny she had avoided for years.
And then one night, everything shattered. Emma arrived at the restaurant to find Laurent waiting, his face pale. "What happened?" she asked. "There's a rumor going around," he said quietly, "about you and Mr. Al-Zahir." Emma's blood ran cold. "What kind of rumor?" "That you're using the kid to get close to him. That you're—" He hesitated. "That you're manipulating a vulnerable child for money." Emma staggered back, the words hitting her like fists. "That's insane. I would never—" "I know," Laurent said quickly. "But the damage is done. The owner heard, and he's not happy." "Who started this?" Emma's voice shook. Laurent looked away. "The woman, Diana Ashford. She's been talking to guests, staff, anyone who will listen." Emma's vision blurred with rage and helplessness. "I'm sorry, Emma, but I can't let you work tonight, maybe not ever." "You're firing me?" "I'm protecting the restaurant." His eyes were genuinely apologetic. "I'm sorry." Emma turned and walked out, her mind spinning, her chest tight. Outside, the city roared around her, indifferent. She had been erased. Again. But this time, it hurt worse. Because this time, she had let herself hope. Emma didn't go home. She walked for hours, the city blurring around her, until she found herself at the small cemetery on the edge of Manhattan. She hadn't been here in months. Lily's grave was simple. A flat stone, her name, her dates. 12 years. That's all she got. Emma sat on the damp grass, her back against the cold stone. "I tried, Lily. I tried to help someone, and I failed." Again. The wind rustled through the trees, cold and indifferent. "I don't know how to do this anymore, Emma. I don't know how to keep pretending I'm okay when I'm not. I don't know how to let people in when they always leave." She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "I miss you so much, it hurts to breathe." And in the silence, she heard nothing. No answers, no comfort. Just the wind and her own broken heart. But across the city, Rashid Al-Zahir was about to do something he had never done before. He was about to fight for someone other than himself. He sat in his penthouse office, Amir sleeping in the next room, and made a phone call. "I need everything you have on Diana Ashford. Every lie she's told, every person she's bribed, everything." On the other end, his attorney hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" "I want it by morning." He hung up and stared out at the city lights, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. Somewhere out there, Emma was hurting. And it was his fault.
He had brought her into his world, exposed her to its cruelty, and then failed to protect her. But that was about to change. Because Sheikh Rashid Al-Zahir had just learned something that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. He wasn't just protecting Amir anymore. He was protecting Emma. And he would burn down anyone who tried to hurt her. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of her phone ringing. She ignored it. Then it rang again and again. Finally, she answered. "Miss Carter." Rashid's voice was tight, urgent. "I need you to come to my office, now." "I can't. I was fired because of—" "I know. That's why I need you here." Emma hesitated. "Mr. Al-Zahir, please." The word was so unexpected, so raw, that Emma found herself agreeing. An hour later, she stood in the lobby of Al-Zahir Tower, a gleaming skyscraper in Midtown. Security escorted her to the top floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Rashid stood with his back to her, his hands in his pockets. "Thank you for coming," he said, without turning. "Why am I here?" He turned, and Emma was shocked by what she saw. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "Because I owe you an apology." His voice was steady, but strained. "Diana spread those rumors to hurt you, and she succeeded because I didn't protect you." Emma's throat tightened. "It's not your responsibility." "It is." He stepped closer. "You've given Amir something I couldn't, hope. And instead of protecting that, I let someone destroy it." His eyes burned. "I won't let that stand." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to tell the truth." He handed her a folder. "This is everything Diana has done. The lies, the manipulation, the people she's hurt." His jaw tightened. "I'm holding a press conference this afternoon. I'm going to expose every one of her lies and make it clear that you are not, and have never been, anything but a good person trying to help a child." Emma stared at the folder, her hands trembling. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." His voice softened. "Because you matter, Emma. To Amir, and to me." The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Emma looked up at him, and for the first time she saw him completely. Not the cold billionaire, not the broken brother, just a man trying to do the right thing. "Why?" she whispered. Rashid stepped closer, so close she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human." Emma's breath caught. "And I don't want to lose that." The press conference was brutal. Rashid stood in front of cameras and reporters, his expression carved from stone, and systematically dismantled Diana's reputation. He presented evidence of her lies, her manipulation, her attempts to blackmail him into marriage. And then he did something no one expected. He spoke about Amir. "My nephew lost his mother a year ago. He stopped speaking, stopped living. I tried everything, therapy, doctors, specialists. Nothing worked." I paused, and then he met Emma Carter, a kind, gentle woman who asked him if he wanted juice. That's all. And for the first time in a year, he spoke. The room was silent. Emma didn't ask for money, didn't ask for anything. She just showed up every night and sat with a grieving child. She gave him something I couldn't. She gave him hope. Tears glistened in his eyes. And Diana Ashford tried to destroy that because she's a cruel, vindictive person who can't stand to see others find happiness. He looked directly into the cameras. "So let me be clear. Emma Carter is not a manipulator. She's a hero. And I will not allow anyone to say otherwise." The room erupted in flashing cameras and shouted questions. But Rashid walked off the stage, ignoring them all. Emma watched the press conference from Rashid's office, tears streaming down her face. Laurent called minutes later, apologizing profusely, begging her to come back. But Emma didn't care about the job anymore. She cared about the man who had just stood in front of the world and defended her. The door opened. Rashid entered, his tie loosened, his expression exhausted. "That was—" Emma's voice broke. "Why did you do that?" "Because it was the truth. And because I'm done pretending I don't care." Emma looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Care about what?" she whispered. About you." The words fell between them like a thunderclap. "Rashid, I know I have no right," he said, his voice raw. "I know I'm arrogant and cold, and I've spent most of my life building walls to keep people out. But you," he reached out, his hand cupping her face gently, "you walked through every single one without even trying." Emma's breath hitched. "I don't expect you to feel the same," he continued, his voice deep. "I just needed you to know." Emma closed her eyes, tears slipping free. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of this. Of you. Of caring about someone and losing them again." Rashid's thumb brushed away her tears. "I'm terrified too." She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we can be terrified together." Rashid smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. And then he kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, like the first breath after drowning. Emma's hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, and for the first time in 5 years, she let herself feel. Not guilt, not grief, just this. When they finally pulled apart, Rashid rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. "Emma," he whispered, "I need to tell you something." "What?" He pulled back slightly, his expression serious. "I had my team investigate the accident, your sister's accident." Emma froze. "What? Why would you—" "Because I needed to understand. I needed to know what connected us." His eyes searched hers. "Emma, Layla, my sister, was in that accident too." The world stopped. "What?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "No, that's not—" "I have the police report, the passenger list. They were sitting together." Rashid's voice was thick with emotion. Layla had taken Amir to a dance studio that day. She was supposed to pick him up, but she got a call, an emergency at work. She asked someone to watch him for 30 minutes. His voice cracked. "Your sister was there for her dance class." Layla and Lily started talking, and when Layla had to leave, Lily offered to stay with Amir until Layla came back. Emma's knees buckled. Rashid caught her, holding her up. "They were together when the bus crashed," he continued, tears in his own eyes now. "Lily died protecting Amir. She covered him with her body. That's why he survived." Emma couldn't breathe. The room spun. "Your sister saved my nephew's life," Rashid whispered. "And I never knew, never had the chance to thank her." Emma sobbed, deep, wrenching sounds that tore from her chest. Rashid held her tightly, his own tears falling into her hair. "She was a hero. Your sister was a hero." Emma clung to him, grief and gratitude and something else, something that felt almost like peace, washing over her in waves. "That's why Amir connected with you," Rashid said quietly. "He doesn't remember it consciously, but somewhere deep inside, he knows. He knows you're connected to the person who saved him." Emma pulled back, her face streaked with tears. "He remembers?" "Not with his mind, with his heart." Rashid cupped her face. "The same way I knew the moment I saw you with him that you understood, that you'd lost someone too." Emma closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling over. "I've spent 5 years hating myself, believing I killed her." "You didn't," Rashid said firmly. "Neither of us did. We were just human. We made choices we thought were right,
And the world took them anyway. Emma looked at him, seeing her own pain reflected back. "How do we live with it?" she asked. "Together," Rashid said simply. "We live with it together." The weeks that followed were unlike anything Emma had ever experienced. Rashid didn't just defend her publicly, he integrated her into his life, into Amir's life. She moved through a world she had only ever seen from the outside. Private cars, penthouses, restaurants where the staff knew Rashid by name and treated him like royalty. But it was in the quiet moments that Emma found something she had never expected. Home. Amir drew her pictures every day. He told her stories about his mother, small, precious memories he had locked away for so long. He sang with her, badly and beautifully, filling the sterile penthouse with laughter. And Rashid? Rashid was transforming before her eyes. The cold, controlled man she had met was still there in business meetings and public appearances. But with her, with Amir, he was different. He smiled more, laughed, made terrible jokes that only a 6-year-old found funny. He was learning to be human again. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of his penthouse, the city glittering below them, Rashid took her hand. "I have something to show you," he said quietly. He led her inside to his office and opened a drawer. Inside was a photograph, old, faded, showing 2 women sitting on a bus, laughing. One was clearly Layla, elegant even in casual clothes. The other was a young blonde girl with bright eyes. Lily. The police found this in Layla's purse. She must have taken it that day. I had it restored. Rashida skies off and das bewins fiendo vai hently. She touched the photograph gently, tracing Lily's face. "They look happy," she whispered. They were. Rashid's voice was thick. In their last moments, they were together. They were friends. And Lily did something so brave, so selfless. He paused. She gave Amir a future. Emma sobbed quietly, the weight of 5 years lifting just slightly. "I want to tell Amir," Rashid said, "when he's ready. I want him to know that your sister is the reason he's alive." Emma nodded, unable to speak. Rashid pulled her close, and they stood together, holding each other, holding the photograph, holding the memory of 2 women who had become heroes in their final act. But even in the midst of healing, darkness lingered. Diana hadn't disappeared. She had been humiliated, exposed, destroyed publicly. And people like Diana didn't accept defeat quietly. Emma felt it in the way strangers looked at her on the street, in the messages Lauren forwarded from anonymous accounts filled with venom, in the way shadows seemed longer, darker. Rashid hired security. Emma hated it, hated feeling like a prisoner, but Rashid insisted, "I won't lose you," he said simply, "not after finding you." And then 3 weeks after the press conference, Diana made her move. Emma was leaving Rashid's building late one evening, heading to her apartment to pick up some clothes. The security guard walked her to the car, professional and alert. But as Emma slid into the back seat, a voice stopped her cold. "Hello, Emma." Diana sat in the shadows of the back seat, her smile sharp as glass. Emma's heart stopped. "How did she—" "Money buys anything," Diana said smoothly, "even temporary loyalty." She gestured to the driver, who did not turn around. "We're going to have a little chat." The car pulled away from the curb. Emma reached for the door handle, but Diana's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "You wouldn't," Diana said, her voice ice. "You scream, you fight, this ends badly for everyone, especially little Amir." Emma froze. "Don't you dare—" "Relax. I'm not going to hurt anyone." Diana released her wrist and sat back. "I just want you to understand something." "Understand what?" "That you don't belong in Rashid's world. You're a novelty, a distraction, a project." Diana's smile was cruel. "He'll get bored, and when he does, you'll be back where you started, alone, broken, and worthless." Emma's hands clenched. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're a waitress playing dress-up. I know you're damaged goods clinging to a fantasy. Diana leaned forward. "I know that every time he looks at you, he's seeing his sister, his guilt, his failure." She paused. "You're not his future, Emma. You're his penance." The words landed like knives. "Get out of his life," Diana continued, her voice soft and deadly. "Walk away. Disappear. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are." "And what's that?" "A broken girl who let her sister die and is now using a traumatized child to fill the void." Emma's vision blurred with rage and pain. "You're wrong," she said, her voice shaking but firm. Diana laughed. "Am I? Then why are you crying?" Emma hadn't realized she was. The car stopped. Diana opened the door. "Think about what I said," she said lightly, "because next time I won't be so nice." Then she was gone, disappearing into the Manhattan night. Emma sat in the car, shaking, Diana's words echoing in her mind. "You're his penance. You let your sister die. You don't belong." The driver, a different man now, one of Rashid's actual security team, turned around, concerned. "Miss Carter, are you all right?" Emma wiped her eyes. "Take me to Rashid." She found him in the penthouse, Amir already asleep. He took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. What happened? Emma told him everything. Every word, every threat. By the time she finished, Rashid's expression was murderous. "She threatened Amir," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "She's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." Rashid pulled out his phone, already dialing. "I'm getting a restraining order, tonight, and I'm—" "Rashid, stop." He looked at her surprised. "She's right about one thing," Emma said quietly. "What?" "I don't belong in your world." Rashid's expression darkened. "Don't let her poison you." "I'm not." Emma's voice was steady now, stronger. "But I need to know something." "Anything?" "Am I your penance?" Rashid froze. "What? Am I just a way for you to fix your guilt, to make up for not saving Layla?" Emma's eyes searched his. "Because if that's what this is, I need to know now." Rashid stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he crossed the room and took both her hands. "The first time I saw you," he said quietly, "I felt nothing but irritation. You were clumsy, nervous, insignificant." He paused. "And then Amir spoke, and I felt hope. For the first time in a year, I felt hope." Emma's throat tightened. At first, yes, it was about him, about helping Amir. Rashid's grip tightened. "But then I started noticing other things. The way you hummed when you thought no one was listening. The way you flinched when people raised their voices. The way you carried grief like I did, like you learned to live with but never put down." Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks. "And somewhere along the way," Rashid continued, his voice breaking, "it stopped being about Amir. It stopped being about guilt or penance or fixing anything." Emma's hands gripped his. "Rashid, I can say that I'm lucky for you." He cupped her face. "You're not my penance, Emma. You're my future, if you'll have me." Emma broke. She kissed him desperately, her hands tangling in his hair, pouring every ounce of fear and love and hope into that single connection. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Rashid rested his forehead against hers. "Diana can threaten all she wants," he said firmly, "but I'm not letting you go. Not now, not ever." Emma smiled through her tears. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere."
The next morning, Rashid did something Emma never expected. He took her to the cemetery. They stood together at Lily's grave, Amir between them holding both their hands. Rashid knelt down, placing a bouquet of white lilies on the stone. "Lily," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "I never got to thank you.
You saved my nephew. You gave him a future." He paused, his eyes listening. "And somehow, in saving him, you saved me too, because you led me to your sister." Emma sobbed quietly, her hand tightening on Amir's. Amir looked up at Rashid, confused. "Who's Lily?" Rashid glanced at Emma. She nodded. "Lily was Emma's sister," Rashid said gently, "and she was very, very brave. A year ago, when you were in an accident, Lily protected you. She made sure you were safe." Amir's eyes widened. "She did?" "Yes, she's the reason you're here with us today." Amir looked at the grave, his small face serious. Then, slowly, he let go of their hands and knelt down, placing his small hand on the stone. "Thank you, Lily," he whispered. Emma couldn't breathe. She knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around him, and they cried together. For loss, for love, for the impossible connection that had brought them all together. Rashid knelt too, his arms around both of them, and for the first time in a year, all three of them felt something they hadn't dared hope for. Peace. But peace, as Emma had learned, was fragile. 2 days later, Diana struck again. Emma was at the penthouse with Amir when the news broke. Her phone exploded with notifications. News articles, social media posts, all with the same headline: "Billionaire's new girlfriend, gold digger, or grieving sister." Someone had leaked Emma's entire history, her financial struggles, her sister's death, her connection to Amir. But it was all twisted, manipulated, presented in the worst possible light. The article suggested Emma had researched Rashid, discovered the connection between Lily and Layla, and engineered the entire relationship. Sources close to Al-Zahir suggest Carter may have orchestrated the chance meeting, using the traumatized child as a way into the billionaire's life and fortune. Emma felt sick. Rashid was in a meeting across town. She called him, her hands shaking. "I saw," he said immediately, his voice tight with fury. "Rashid, they're saying I planned this, that I used Amir." "I know what they're saying, and it's lies. Emma, listen to me. This is what Diana does. She manipulates, she destroys, but she won't win, I promise you." "How can you stop this? It's everywhere." "Because I have something she doesn't." "What?" "The truth." That afternoon, Rashid held an emergency press conference. This time, Emma stood beside him. She was terrified. Every camera, every reporter, every eye in the room was on her, judging, dissecting, waiting for her to crumble. But Rashid took her hand, his grip firm and steady. "I'm going to make a statement, and I won't be taking questions." The room quieted. 2 months ago, my nephew spoke for the first time in over a year. He spoke to Emma Carter, a woman he had just met, a woman who showed him simple kindness. Since then, Emma has become an integral part of our lives. Not because she sought us out, not because she wanted money or fame, but because she cared. He paused, his eyes scanning the room. Yes, Emma's sister and my sister died in the same accident. Yes, Emma's sister saved Amir's life. But Emma didn't know that when she met us. Neither did I. We discovered it together, and it brought us closer, because we understood each other's pain. His grip on Emma's hand tightened. The articles circulating today are filled with lies created by someone with a vendetta, someone who can't accept that I have moved on. He looked directly into the cameras. Emma Carter is not a gold digger. She's not a manipulator. She's a kind, brave, selfless woman who's been through hell and still finds the strength to help others. Emma's vision blurred with tears. And I am in love with her. The room erupted. Emma's head snapped toward him, shock written across her face. Rashid turned to her, ignoring the chaos around them. "I'm in love with you," he said again, quieter this time, just for her. "I should have said it sooner, but I'm saying it now, in front of everyone, because I want the world to know." Emma couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "You don't have to say it back," Rashid continued, his eyes vulnerable. "I just needed you to know." Emma's tears spilled over. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "I love you too. God, I love you too." The cameras flashed like lightning, capturing the moment. And for once, Emma didn't care. Let them look. Let them judge. She had found something worth fighting for. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Diana. Within 24 hours, Rashid's legal team had traced the leaked information back to her. She had paid a journalist, bribed a staff member, manufactured evidence. She was arrested for harassment, defamation, and attempted blackmail. The charges wouldn't stick forever. Money had a way of softening consequences. But her reputation was destroyed. No one in their circle would touch her now. Emma should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired. "Is it over?" she asked Rashid that night, as they sat on the balcony, the city quiet below them. "Yes," he said firmly. "It's over." Emma leaned into him, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Rashid was silent for a moment. Then he said, "What do you want to happen?" Emma thought about it. For 5 years, she had lived day to day, never planning beyond the next shift, the next bill, the next moment of survival. But now, "I want to live," she said softly. "Really live. Not just survive." Rashid smiled. "Then that's what we'll do." The months that followed were filled with healing, growth, and something Emma had thought she'd lost forever: joy. She enrolled in college part-time, studying child psychology. She wanted to help kids like Amir, kids who had lost their voices and needed someone to hear them anyway. Rashid supported her completely, never once suggesting she didn't need to work, never making her feel small or dependent. Amir thrived. He returned to school, made friends, laughed freely. He still had hard days, days when he missed his mother so much he couldn't speak, but Emma and Rashid were there holding him through it. And slowly, carefully, they became a family. Not perfect, not without pain, but real. A year after they first met, Rashid took Emma and Amir back to Le Ciel Doré. They sat at table 12, the same table where everything had begun. Laurent personally served them, his eyes twinkling. "It's good to see you all," he said warmly. Emma smiled. "It's good to be back." After dinner, as Amir drew pictures on his napkin, Rashid reached across the table and took Emma's hand. "I have something to ask you," he said quietly. Emma's heart skipped. "What?" Rashid stood, and Emma's heart caught as he pulled a small box from his pocket. "Emma Carter, you walked into my life at my lowest moment and gave me something I thought I'd lost forever: hope, love, a reason to be better." He knelt down, opening the box to reveal a simple, stunning ring. "Will you marry me?" Emma's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Amir looked up, his eyes wide. "Are you going to be my mom?" he whispered. Emma laughed through her tears. "Is that okay with you?" Amir nodded eagerly. "Yes! Say yes!" Emma looked at Rashid, at this man who had been cold and broken and had learned to be warm again, at this man who had defended her, protected her, loved her even when she couldn't love herself. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. Rashid stood and kissed her as the entire restaurant erupted in applause. Amir jumped up and hugged them both, laughing. And Emma felt it. The weight she had carried for 5 years, finally lifting. Not gone, never completely gone, but bearable. Because she wasn't carrying it alone anymore.
The wedding was small, intimate, just close friends and family and a garden overlooking the city. Emma wore a simple white dress. Amir was the ring bearer, taking his job very seriously. And when Emma walked down the aisle, not to grand music, but to a song Lily used to love, she felt her sister there, smiling, proud. Rashid's eyes never left hers, and when they exchanged vows, his voice was steady and sure. "You saved me," he said, "not by fixing me, but by seeing me, by accepting me, by loving me, even when I didn't deserve it." His voice cracked. "I will spend the rest of my life earning that love." Emma's voice shook as she spoke her own vows. "I was lost for so long," she said, "living but not alive. And then I met you, and a boy who needed someone to listen." She looked at Amir, who beamed at her. "You didn't give me a new life. You helped me find the one I thought I'd lost." She turned back to Rashid. "I will love you through the hard days and the good ones, through grief and joy, through everything." They sealed their promises with a kiss, and the small crowd cheered. That night, after the celebration, after Amir had fallen asleep exhausted and happy, Emma and Rashid stood on the balcony of their home, no longer his, but theirs. "Do you think Lily would approve?" Emma asked quietly, leaning against him. Rashid wrapped his arms around her. "I think she'd be proud of you." Emma smiled. "I think Layla would be proud of you, too." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. "What are you thinking?" Rashid asked. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm thinking about how strange life is. How much can change in a single moment. How one spilled glass of water can lead to this." Rashid chuckled. "The most expensive spill of my life." Emma elbowed him playfully. "You said you were over the suit." "I am." He turned her to face him, his expression serious. "I'd ruin 1,000 suits if it meant finding you again." Emma's heart swelled. She kissed him softly. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. For not giving up on Amir. For—" She paused, searching for words. "For reminding me that broken doesn't mean worthless." Rashid rested his forehead against hers. "I taught you the same thing." They held each other as the city hummed below, two people who had been shattered and found a way to fit their pieces together. Not perfectly, but beautifully. 5 years later, Emma stood in a small office at a community center in Brooklyn. The walls were covered with children's drawings, bright and chaotic. A sign on the door read, "The Lily Foundation, where every voice matters." It was a program Emma had started with Rashid's support, a place for traumatized children to find their voices again, through art, music, and therapy. Named after her sister, funded by Rashid's fortune, but driven by Emma's heart. Today was the grand opening. Emma looked out at the crowd gathered, parents, children, community leaders, reporters, and there in the front row sat Rashid with Amir, now 11 years old, tall and confident, his mother's smile living on in his face. Beside them sat a little girl, 3 years old, with Rashid's dark eyes and Emma's blonde hair, Nora, their daughter. She was drawing on a piece of paper, completely absorbed, just like her brother had been all those years ago. Emma stepped up to the microphone, her hands no longer trembling the way they once had. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice clear and strong.
5 years ago, I lost someone I loved more than life itself, my little sister, Lily. For a long time, I believed her death was my fault, that if I had been there, things would have been different. She paused, looking at Rashid, who nodded encouragingly. But grief doesn't work that way. It doesn't follow logic or fairness. It just is. She smiled softly. What I've learned is that we can't change the past. We can't bring back the people we've lost, but we can honor them. We can take the love they gave us and pass it forward. Emma's eyes swept across the children in the audience, shy ones, scared ones, broken ones. The Lily Foundation exists because my sister believed every person mattered. Every voice deserved to be heard, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. Her voice grew stronger. This place will be a safe space for children who have experienced trauma, who have lost their voices, who need someone to sit with them and say, I see you. I hear you. You matter. She looked at Amir, who was watching her with pride. Because sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you to remember how to speak again. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, as families toured the facility, Emma found herself in the art room. She ran her fingers over the small tables, the bins of crayons, the walls waiting to be filled with children's dreams. She would be so proud. Emma turned. Rashid stood in the doorway, with Nora on his hip, Amir beside him. You think so? Emma asked. I know so. Rashid crossed the room, and Amir took Nora from him so Rashid could wrap his arms around Emma. Look at what you've built. Look at how many children you're going to help. Emma leaned into him. We built it. Together. Mama, look! Nora called from across the room. She held up a drawing, a messy, beautiful picture of their family holding hands. Emma's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect, baby. Amir crouched beside his little sister. You're a good artist, Nora, just like Grandma Layla. Nora beamed. And Aunt Lily? Yes, Emma said, her voice thick. Just like Aunt Lily, too. Rashid took Emma's hand, squeezing gently. They had taught their children about the women who came before, Layla and Lily, the two sisters who had died together and somehow brought two broken people together in their wake. Do you think they know? Emma asked quietly. Rashid was silent for a moment, watching their children. I think they're the reason it happened. Emma looked at him questioning. Layla always said that love finds a way, even in darkness, even in death. She smiled sadly. Maybe they found a way to give us what we couldn't give ourselves. Hope, Emma whispered. Hope. Rashid echoed. That evening, after they had put the children to bed, Emma and Rashid drove to the cemetery. It was something they did once a month, bringing flowers, sharing updates, keeping their sisters' memories alive. They stood together between the two graves, Lily's stone on the left, Layla's on the right. In the 5 years since they'd been married, Rashid had moved Layla's remains to be beside Lily's, together in death as they had been in their final moments. I opened the foundation today, Emma said softly, addressing both stones. It's everything I hoped it would be, everything you would have wanted, Lily. Rashid placed a bouquet on each grave. Amir is thriving. He's top of his class. Wants to be a doctor, so he can help people. His voice was thick with emotion. You'd be so proud of him, Layla. He has your strength, your kindness. Emma continued. And Nora, she's wild and brilliant and stubborn. She reminds me of you, Lily, always questioning everything, always challenging me. She smiled through tears. She's going to change the world someday. They stood in silence for a long moment, the wind rustling through the trees. "I forgive myself now," Emma said quietly, "for not being there, for not saving you. I know you wouldn't want me to carry that guilt anymore." She wiped her eyes. "And I hope, wherever you are, you forgive me too." Rashid pulled her close. "I forgive myself too, Layla, for the fight, for the anger, for not saying I loved you one last time. But I'm saying it now. I love you, and I always will."
They held each other as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "They're together," Emma said. "It brings me comfort. They didn't die alone." "No," Rashid agreed. "They had each other, just like we have each other now." Emma looked up at him. After 5 years of marriage, she still felt the same flutter in her chest when he looked at her like this, like she was his whole world. "I never thought I'd be happy again," she admitted. "After Lily died, I thought joy was something I'd never deserve. And now? Now I know that joy isn't something we deserve or don't deserve. It's something we choose." She smiled. "And I choose it every day with you." Rashid kissed her forehead. "We should head home. Amir has a science project due tomorrow that he swears he's finished, but probably hasn't." Emma laughed, "And Nora will be awake any minute demanding bedtime stories." They walked back to the car, hand in hand, leaving the cemetery behind, but carrying their sister's love with them. 2 weeks later, Emma arrived at the Lily Foundation for her first day of sessions. 10 children had enrolled, ranging from ages 5 to 12, all dealing with various forms of trauma. Emma stood in the art room, her heart pounding with familiar anxiety. What if she couldn't help them? What if she failed? But then she thought of Amir, of that first night when he had spoken to her, when he had said, "Don't go." She hadn't known what she was doing then either, but she had stayed, and it had been enough. The children filed in slowly, cautiously, a small boy with dark skin and defensive eyes, a girl with red hair who wouldn't look up, twins who held hands so tightly their knuckles were white, a teenager with a cast on his arm and bruises on his soul. Emma smiled gently. "Hi, everyone. My name is Emma, and this is a safe place." She didn't force them to talk, didn't push. She simply sat with them, offered art supplies, and let them exist. An hour passed in near silence, and then the small boy with defensive eyes picked up a crayon. He drew a house, a tree, a sun. "That's beautiful," Emma said softly. He didn't respond, but he drew another picture. By the end of the session, 5 of the children had created something. The others had watched, slowly relaxing, their shoulders no longer up by their ears. As they left, the small boy paused at the door. "Miss Emma?" She turned. "Yes?" "Will you be here next week?" Emma's heart clenched. "I'll be here every week, I promise." He nodded and left. And Emma knew this was her purpose. This was what Lily's life had meant. Not the tragedy of her death, but the ripple of love she had left behind. Months turned into years. The Lily Foundation grew, expanded, helped hundreds of children. Emma became known not as the billionaire's wife, but as the woman who listens. Amir graduated high school with honors, got accepted to medical school. He never forgot where he came from, the silent boy who had been saved by a spilled glass of water and a kind word. Nora grew into a fierce, compassionate little girl who volunteered at the foundation every weekend, reading to younger children, making them laugh. And Rashid, cold, arrogant Rashid, became the man Emma always knew he could be. Generous, warm, present.
He cut back on work, spent more time with his family, and donated millions to causes that mattered. He had learned what Emma knew all along. Money couldn't buy the things that mattered most. Connection, love, purpose, peace. 10 years after that first night at Le Ciel Doré, Emma received a letter. It was from a young woman named Sophie. She had been one of the first children at the Lily Foundation, the red-haired girl who wouldn't look up. The letter read, "Dear Ms. Al-Zahir, I don't know if you remember me. I came to the Lily Foundation when I was 8 years old. I had just lost my father and stopped speaking. I was angry at everyone and everything. You never forced me to talk. You just sat with me, week after week. You drew with me. You sang quietly while I worked. You made me feel like my silence was okay, like I was okay. It took 6 months before I spoke to you. Do you remember what I said? I said, I miss him. And you said, I know. I miss someone too. And that's okay. That was the moment I realized I wasn't broken. I was just grieving, and grief was something I could survive. I'm writing to tell you that I just graduated college. I'm going to be a teacher, and I'm going to help kids the way you helped me. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for staying. With love and gratitude, Sophie." Emma read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She found Rashid in his study. He looked up, saw her tears, and immediately stood. "What's wrong?" Emma handed him the letter. He read it, his own eyes growing wet. "This is what it's all about," Emma whispered. "This is why Lily died, why Layla died, why we found each other." She looked at him. "To create more of this, more hope, more healing." Rashid pulled her into his arms. "You did this. You took your pain and turned it into purpose." "We did this," Emma corrected. "All of us, together." That night, Emma stood on the balcony of their penthouse, the same balcony where Rashid first told her he loved her. The city spread out below, infinite and alive. She thought about the girl she had been 10 years ago, broken, terrified, invisible. She thought about the moment her life had changed, not gradually, but in an instant. One spilled glass of water, one desperate child, one arrogant man hiding his grief. And everything had changed. "Mama," Emma turned. Nora stood in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Can't sleep, baby?" Nora shook her head and climbed into Emma's lap. They sat together, looking at the stars barely visible through the city lights. "Mama, do you think Aunt Lily is a star?" Emma's throat tightened. "I think she might be." "Which one?" Emma pointed to the brightest star visible. "That one. And Grandma Layla is right beside her." Nora stared at the stars solemnly. "Are they happy?" "I think so. I think they're proud of us, of the family we have become, of the love we have built from their loss. I wish I could have met them." "Me too, sweetheart." Emma kissed her daughter's head. "But they live on, in us, in the foundation, in every child we help, in every voice that finds its way back." Nora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I want to help people too, like you and Daddy, like Amir." Emma's heart swelled. "You already do, Nora, just by being kind, just by caring." "Is that enough?" "It's everything." They sat together until Nora's breathing grew slow and steady. Emma carried her back to bed, tucking her in carefully. When she returned to the balcony, Rashid was there, 2 cups of tea in his hands. "Is she asleep?" "Yes." Emma took the tea gratefully. They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of knowing each other's thoughts without needing words. Emma asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met?" Rashid considered. I think I would have stayed cold, distant, raised Amir, but never truly connected with him. He paused. I think I would have survived, but never really lived. And now? He turned to her, his eyes soft. Now I am alive, truly alive, because of you. Emma smiled. We saved each other. No, Rashid said. We helped each other remember we were worth saving. Emma set down her tea and wrapped her arms around him. He held her tightly, the way he always did, like she was precious, irreplaceable, home. I love you, she whispered. I'll never stop loving you. I love you, too, in this life and whatever comes after.
Years continued to pass, marked by graduations, birthdays, new children at the foundation, quiet dinners, and loud holidays. Amir became a doctor, just as he dreamed, specializing in pediatric trauma. Nora followed in Emma's footsteps, studying psychology and art therapy. And Emma and Rashid grew old together, not without challenges, not without grief, but with a love that had been forged in fire and tested by time. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they returned to Les Ciels Dorés. The restaurant had changed ownership, but Table 12 remained, as if waiting for them. They sat across from each other, older now, grayer, but their eyes still held the same light. 20 years, Emma said, shaking her head in wonder. It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Do you remember what you said to me that first night I asked you to come back? Rashid asked. Emma thought. I said I'd be there. And you have been, every day since. Rashid reached across the table, taking her hand. You kept your promise. So did you, Emma said. You promised to earn my love, and you have, every single day. Rashid smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made Emma's heart skip. What do you think happens now? We're not young anymore. The kids are grown. The foundation runs itself. Now, Rashid said, we get to simply be. No more surviving, no more healing, just living, together. Emma's eyes filled with happy tears. I like the sound of that. They finished their meal in peaceful conversation, remembering the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the loss, the impossible coincidences, the love that grew from ashes. As they left the restaurant, Emma paused at table 12 one last time. Thank you, she whispered to the empty space, to the memory of that night, to whatever force in the universe that had brought them together. Rashid took her hand. Ready? Emma looked at him, this man who had once been ice and was now warmth, this man who had saved her by letting her save him. Yes, she said, I'm ready. They walked out into the Manhattan night, the city glowing around them, two people who had been broken and had learned to be whole. Not by erasing the past, not by forgetting the pain, but by honoring it, learning from it, growing through it, then finding in the midst of grief something neither had expected, a reason to believe in second chances, a reason to hope, a reason to love again. Years later, Emma would visit Lily's grave alone. She would sit on the grass, her joints a little stiffer, her hair more silver than gold, and she would talk. I did it, Lily. I built the life you never got to live. I loved the way you taught me to love, fiercely, bravely, without holding back. I raised children who know your name, who carry your kindness in their hearts. I helped kids who were lost find their way back, just like someone once helped me. And I learned something important. You didn't die for nothing. Your last act protecting Amir, it created ripples, ripples that became waves, waves that changed everything. I miss you every day, but I'm not broken by it anymore. I'm honored by it, because knowing you, loving you, losing you, it made me who I am. And who I am is enough. Emma would place flowers on the grave, kiss her fingers, and press them to the stone. Then she would stand, turn toward home, and walk forward. Not running from the past, not dragging it behind her, but carrying it gently, the way one carries something sacred. Because grief, Emma had learned, wasn't the enemy, it was love's shadow. And where there was shadow, there had once been light. In a small art room in Brooklyn, a child who hasn't spoken in months picks up a crayon. She draws a sun, a house, two figures holding hands. A volunteer, Noura Al-Zahir, now 25, kneels beside her. "That's beautiful," Noura says softly. "Will you tell me about it?" The child looks at her, eyes wide and scared and hopeful all at once. And then, in a voice barely louder than breath, she whispers, "It's me, and someone who stayed." Nora's eyes fill with tears. She thinks of her mother, her aunt she never met, the legacy of staying, of listening, of believing that every voice matters. "I'm glad they stayed," Nora says gently. The child nods, and somewhere in the space between memory and hope, two sisters smile. Their love had created ripples, and those ripples had become waves, waves that would go on forever. Because love once given never truly ends. It only transforms. It only grows. It only continues. For Lily, for Layla, for every voice that found its way back, for second chances, for hope, for love.